The strange Google antitrust case nobody is talking about. Hello lovely YouTube family, welcome back to Reality Binge. In today's video we're going to talk about the strange Google antitrust case nobody is talking about. Before we start, I would want you to hit that red subscribe button so you never miss out on any of our videos. Google, which controls about 90% of the online search market in the US, is unchallenged gateway and the internet and engaged in a variety of anti-competitive practices to maintain and extend its monopoly, the government said in a complaint filed Tuesday in Washington. The company has used exclusive deals costing billions of dollars to dominate search and lock out competition from rivals, the US said. No one can feasibly challenge Google's dominance in search of advertising. Attorney General William Barr said, if we let Google continue its anti-competitive ways, we'll lose the next wave of innovators and Americans may never get to benefit from the next Google. The complaint is the first phase of what's shaping up as a multi-pronged attack against Google. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is preparing a complaint against the company over its conduct in the digital advertising market, where it controls much of the technology used by advertisers and publishers to buy and sell display ads across the web. A separate group of states, includes Colorado and Iowa, is investigating Google's search practices and said their probe will conclude in the coming weeks. A wave of private lawsuits is likely to follow the government's case. Investors brushed off the complaint, which has been expected for weeks. Alphabet shares rose 1.4% to close to $1,551.08 in New York trading. Mark Schulmick, analyst at Sanford C. Bernstein, told investors that the firm sees limited risk to Google from suit. Google's search business generates most of the company's revenue and has funded its expansion into email, online video, smartphone software, maps, cloud computing, autonomous vehicles, and display advertising. The search engine influences the fates of thousands of businesses online, which depend on Google to get in front of users. Google called the government case deeply flawed and said that it would actually hurt consumers because it was artificially prop up lower quality search options and raise phone prices. People use Google because they choose to, not because they're forced to, or because they can't find alternatives. Google Chief Legal Officer Kent Walker said in a blog post in response to the complaint. Walker likened Google's distribution agreements with phone makers and wireless carriers to the way that a cereal brand would pay a supermarket to stock its products on a shelf at eye level. Other search engines are able to compete with Google for those deals. He said, users can also easily switch to other search engines on desktops and phones, Walker wrote. This isn't dial-up in the 1990s, when changing services was slow and difficult, and often required you to buy and install software with a CD-ROM, he said. Today you can easily download your choice of apps or change your default settings in a matter of seconds, faster than you can walk to another aisle in a grocery store. Google began dominating online search 20 years ago with an algorithm that delivered better results than those of its rivals. Since then, it has been relied on its own products, like its Android mobile operating system, an exclusive agreement with device makers and mobile carriers to be default search option for millions of users. That's given it insurmountable advantage over rivals, according to the government. The exclusive agreements with phone makers like Apple Incorporated and wireless carriers like Verizon Communications Incorporated denies rivals the scale of distribution they need to compete against Google in search, the US said. Google monetizes its dominance in search by selling advertising, which it uses to pay for exclusive deals. Those payments create a strong disincentive for distributors to switch to another service, according to the complaint. Though these exclusionary payoffs and other anti-competitive conduct described below, Google had created continuous and self-reinforcing monopolies in multiple markets, the US said. In a briefing with reporters, Justice Department officials declined to discuss what specific remedies the government would seek. It would be up to federal court judges to decide what remedy to impose, including whether to break up on Google businesses. At a minimum, this would require stopping that conduct, but additional relief may be necessary, said Alex Okiler, the department's deputy for civil antitrust. The Justice Department's case, which Texas and 10 other states joined, is the first to emerge from an investigation of some of the largest technology companies initiated by Barr 15 months ago. It's the most significant antitrust lawsuit since the US filed a case against Microsoft Corporation in 1998 and marks a seismic shift away from the government's mostly laissez-faire approach towards America's tech giants. While it's not illegal to be a monopoly under US law, it's a violation for a dominant company to engage in exclusionary conduct to protect or strengthen its market power. Barr championed the Google case by giving it a high priority and signing it the number 2 to oversee it. Yet as his department filled the long-awaited lawsuit in federal court, Barr was off preparing to speak on Law & Order in Marco Island, Florida. Barr has taken a low profile since President Donald Trump, starting about 2 weeks ago, began pushing him to prosecute his political enemies. On Tuesday, Trump demanded that Barr investigate Hunter Biden. The Google cases by Justice Department and the state attorneys general could be followed by the Federal Trade Commission case later this year against Facebook Incorporated, joined by state attorney general. In Congress, Representative Dave Sisselin intends to push legislation to curb the dominance of tech giants following findings of an investigation that Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon Incorporated abused their powers as gatekeepers in the digital economy. Sisseline, the Rhode Island Democrat who led the House of Investigation of Competition and Big Tech, called the action long overdue. Senator Elizabeth Warren said the case against Google is clear and could have gone further with its allegations against the company. Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri praised the lawsuit. The United States Department of Justice (DOJ) sued Google, alleging that the company had abused its dominant position in a way that had harmed its competitors as well as consumers. 11 U.S. states have joined the DOJ in an antitrust lawsuit against Google for unlawfully maintaining a monopoly in general search services and search advertising. What is the lawsuit about? In the statement announcing the initiation of the lawsuit, Deputy Attorney General of the DOJ, Jeffrey A. Rosen, said the main concerns are business practices that may have led to massive concentrations of economic power. In a few companies such as Google, the lawsuit will focus on Google as its gateway out to the internet and search advertising behemoth. Google achieved some success in its early years, and no one begrudges that. But, as the antitrust complaint filed today explains, it has maintained monopoly power through the exclusionary practices that harm competition. So the Justice Department has determined that an antitrust response is necessary to benefit customers, Rosen said in the statement. What led to the lawsuit? Earlier this month, a U.S. House of Representatives panel submitted the report of bipartisan investigation into the working of Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook. The probe had started in July 2019. These companies have been on the radar of the governments in many countries for being big spenders and trying to steamroll competition by either buying out their rivals or pushing vendors to avoid working with these rivals. The U.S. Congress wanted to know, for example, if Apple had, in order to promote an app that enables the parents to limit screen time for children, thrown out a rival app on the pretense that it was not safe. The panel said each of these companies was now acting as a gatekeeper over a key channel of distribution, which meant that they had full control of what went on with their respective domains. The report called for big technology companies be broken up and for a presumptive prohibition against future mergers and acquisitions by the dominant platform. Why is this lawsuit important? The lawsuit marks the first time there has been a bipartisan effect involving both the Democratic and Republican parties to look into the monopolistic powers of Google. The challenge for Google, experts said, would be continued scrutiny into its biggest revenue-generating segment, which is advertising gained from its search engine and affiliate websites. In the April-June quarter, the company had earned nearly $38 billion, mainly from advertisements. Apart from increased federal scrutiny, big tech companies are also likely to face more questions and probes from states in the US, which have in the recent past hauled these firms up for the not doing more to control their influence on day-to-day aspects of life. The last time Google faced legal action for allegedly abusing its dominance in the search market was almost a decade ago, in 2011, when the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) was acting on a complaint filed by Washington-based nonprofit research agency Electronic Privacy Information Center. Although the 5 commissioners eventually voted not to pursue a case against Google, the company had to, as a part of the settlement process, implement a strict user data security policy and agree to independent privacy audits for the next 20 years. Google is a global market player. The lawsuit would have a worldwide impact where Google's practices could have potentially be looked at. But having said that, the CCI, Competition Commission of India, is already looking into such practices and has already fined Google previously. There is much under the CCI radar to keep them practices under check. Competition law expert and partner at L&L Partners, Kanika Chatteray Nayar, says, Fall Express explained on Telegram. What are the allegations that Google faces in India? Over the last 3 years, Google has had multiple run-ins with the CCI for alleged abuse of its dominant position in the search engine market, the Android smartphone and television market, as well as the Google Flight service. In 2019, India's antitrust body had held Google guilty of misuse of its dominant position in the mobile Android market and said the company had imposed unfair conditions on device manufacturers to prevent them from using other operating systems. And in February 2018, the CCI had fined Google Rs 136 crore for unfair business practices in the online search market. It said Google had allocated disproportionate real estate for its affiliates to the advantage of other companies that were trying to gain market access. Besides, it was also found that Google had provided a further link in such commercial units, which leads users to specialized search results page, Google Flight, resulting in unfair imposition upon the users of general search services as well, the CCI said. Google has challenged the CCI findings in forums such as the National Company Law, Appellate Tribunal, and the Supreme Court. What could the U.S. Justice Department action mean for Google? Although the lawsuit is first of its kind, it is unlikely that there will be any swift action on the company in the near term, experts said. The lawsuit is just beginning of something formal after the House panel reports going ahead. Google may argue before the courts that it's being singled out from amongst the other companies as to explain why it does not really abuse its dominance in any market segment, said a legal expert who had advised some companies against Google's 2018 case in CCI. That's all for today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss any amazing video from us.